But all of those people, almost 100% watch Turin too. So I'm wondering if there's people that watch that content that don't also watch Turin. I feel like the percent has to be sub 1%. You know, maybe one day, the monopoly that is Turin will eventually be surpassed. But today is not the day. As so we're still building up that community on the quest for what's it? I think it's 500 Twitch followers. So that we can get some nice recognition from CA. And then until then, we won't really be worrying about surpassing Turin. But okay, here we go. We have a very heavy infantry force with a bunch of cheap cavalry so that we don't get punished by fungi. Front line of zombies as usual. And something that I'm testing out. 3 units of Grave Guard. I think they do okay versus Savage Orcs. And hopefully they'll be able to chop up some Stone Trolls with their nice AP damage sitting at 29. Should do okay. So let's see how this goes. We also have double White King. Scab Scraths to deal with with Savage Orcs. And their nice melee attack to kill Stone Trolls. Looking at our opponent, he does indeed have a bunch of Stone Trolls, along with Black Orc Big Boss and Grom the Paunch, instead of the usual Skarsnik. So it looks like I could have actually gone for those Blood Knights this game. But whatever, this is fine. And I guess we want to start Spirit Leeching. I'll start Spirit Leeching the Orc Shaman, since getting rid of that spell casting can be pretty big if you do it early enough. And he is a little bit less tanky than the Black Orc Big Boss, so should be good. Let's see here. Okay, he's staying pretty still. He does have some fanatics, so we don't want to clump up too hard. And yeah, just a bunch of Savage Orcs that it looks like we'll be able to start cycle charging. No real need to get in the fight super early. We just want to be very efficient with our troops. Looks like our Black Knights actually took quite a bit of damage there doing that charge. So maybe we'll have to be a little bit more careful with them. But we do get a nice breath attack. If that does rout off the goblins, it means that you will... Oh, it means that... What's it? Oh dear, this is bad. If we do rout off the goblins, it is pretty good, because it means we can chase them off with our knights. But you really do not want to be losing your lord, especially during November. So we're going to sacrifice some knight damage to pull out our lord. And at the same time, we can break off this flank over here with some charges to the back. This also means that the Greenskin forces are separated. So hopefully we'll be able to land the dragon and pick off this side of the army, which it looks like we should be able to do. So that's pretty good. And the Black Orc Big Boss also isn't there, so we can actually chase off some Stone Trolls and those Savage Orcs. So there we go. So far looking very good in our favor, especially since we have another blob here. So we can go ahead and use a breath attack, causing loads of damage. Grom the Paunch also out of position now. Means that we'll be able to land our dragon on him and do quite a bit of damage. Stone Trolls coming in to support, but no problem, as we have many lines of defense waiting to support. Stone Trolls just checking to make sure that they are indeed routing off the map, since you definitely don't want them to come back. If they rally, that's like a 700 gold value for the Greenskins player that we definitely do not want to be giving. So okay, I think next priority is to route off probably the infantry. Now that I'm looking at it, we can throw down a huge AoE debuff, land the dragon, and then that should be a mass rout from the Greenskins. Their leadership might stick around, but I don't think that will be enough. And as you can see, huge rout on everything except for the leadership. Now all we have to do is pull our knights so that they can effectively chase them off, and then the game will just be cycle charging down their heroes. But there we go. Yeah, really using our anti-blob tech pretty well. Means that it wasn't too much of a worry for this game. There we go. And there's army losses. GG to our opponent. And nice. He did blob up a little bit. We got to punish that with some very nice breath attacks. You can see Manfred with 114 kills. But yeah, what was the next faction I was gonna play anyways? Beastmen. Oh yeah, Beastmen's an interesting one too. I feel like I have an okay grasp of how they play, but I can't actually play them well enough for it to be worth doing a lot of the time. And yeah, anyways, we're in the game now, so let's go over our army selection. We've opted for a heavy cavalry force as our main anti-infantry, along with skirmishers who also act as pretty heavy anti-infantry. These are Outrider grenade launchers, and they do a whole ton of damage. So we're feeling pretty safe on that front. For our anti-large, such as Verse Hellpits, we have Marcus, along with 2 units of Huntsmen, and a pretty cheap front line. If we do get rushed, we should be able to use our cavalry to our advantage. So not feeling too worried if that does happen. And also we have the Royal Altdorf Griffites, which will be nice against just about everything in the Skaven roster, as long as they don't get shot to bits. They do bring terror, so I'll have to be very careful with them. And I expect to be using the forest a lot in this battle to keep them safe. For our opponent's army, he's brought Warp Fire Throwers, along with a ton of gun support in the form of Rattling guns. He also has the Deathquake Mortars, and Skrulk with a whole bunch of cheap infantry as a front line. So pretty scary army there, but something that I expect our knights to be able to run over as long as we're careful with them. The Deathquake Mortars could be a problem, but we do have Marcus, and he will be able to pick away at them with his ranged attack. So not too worried there. Oh, whoops. Yeah, not too worried about them there. And yeah, we'll be able to use this forest to our advantage. Our opponent does advance, which means that his left flank is well covered. So it does reduce our options a little bit there. He is actually advancing pretty close to the forest, probably to spot our troops. But anyways, let's move up Marcus, and hopefully he'll be able to start killing off these mortars. Our opponent does have 2 assassins, but thankfully they weren't in position to kill off Marcus. And we also have a clan rat summon coming his way. Going to use some of our outrider fire just to try to get those clan rats to rout. I'm thinking better of that now, and instead I'm going to just leave them be so that our outriders are able to do their work. So there we go. We've broken off the left flank, and now feels like a good time to advance with our army, since these guys should be getting routed off pretty quickly. Let's see, Marcus. You know what? Maybe we should try sniping Squulk instead. So we'll go ahead and use his ability there. And then these archers can move in and I guess shoot the Clan Vulcan tail slashers. Our huntsmen actually don't have many good targets here, so we will have to be careful. And okay, we're getting pretty nice damage on Squulk. So I think our next order of operations is probably just dive those poison wind mortars. They're doing a lot of damage, and we really want to finish them off quickly before they get too much damage. Alright, we are getting a bit of lag, making it difficult to cast our abilities. But anyways, I think we're still doing good. Our heavy cavalry force can probably just run over his back line as our spearmen come into support. So honestly, no problems here. I'm feeling pretty confident. Major threats though, he is using the warp grinders to stop our cavalry from completely bulldozing through. So we're going to pull our cavalry towards our spearmen so that they can circle around the warp grinders a little bit better. Whoa, what is that? Oh, is that pathing? Anyways, let's see. So Marcus looks like he took some damage from Squulk, probably. He's going to be returning fire as he has no real targets at this point. And yeah, we're just going to keep trying to move our cavalry. It is getting pretty hard to tell what in the world is going on here. So we're going to do our best to parse through the madness. And let's see. I think our knights are heading in the right direction. They are being stalled up. So instead, we're going to be putting our micro into the outriders with grenade launchers and Marcus, since they feel they seem to be the most easily controlled units at the moment. Means that we still have a whole bunch that we can do. There was also a summon on the flanks that will be able to use our grenade launchers to take care of. And also, I'm seeing that it looks like our opponent is trying to snipe out Wolfheart, so we're going to be pulling him back and away from Squulk. Seems like our knights are also taking a little bit of a beating, but our Altdorf Griffites are still strong at 23 models, and I expect them to be able to pull through. I'm also a little bit worried about the rallying Skaven guns, so I'm going to be sending out my grenade launchers to go deal with them. Meanwhile, let's check in on the health of our knights. They're really just stuck in combat with the warp grinders. Not exactly the position that I want them to be in. And at this point, really only the Griffites are safe. Maybe they're just taking a whole bunch of damage from the assassins. Not entirely sure. But okay, Outrider grenade launchers can move in and chase off these Skaven forces. And you know what? I think it's about time we pulled our knights out of that combat. They seem to be losing. And having them cycle charge will definitely be good. It's okay. Come on, my knights. Get out of there. And probably charge those Skaven spears. Now, okay, we have an interesting situation where we don't have a lot to deal with the Skaven heroes. So we'll have to be very careful with Marcus and our Bright Wizard to snipe them off later in the game. Everything else isn't nearly as important, as even our cavalry with cycle charging won't really have a good time for Skulk. So instead, we're just going to use our infantry to slow that down as much as possible. And then that should be good. So here we go. We're chasing off the Skaven routing units. And our spearmen are taking a bit of a beating. Like I said, no problem. I think at this point, we can probably just be very patient. You know, sit back and make sure that all of those troops are chased off before we go for the lords. It's only a shame that being patient in this situation means that we do have to sit through quite a bit of lag. So I guess while we do that, if anyone has any questions for me in chat, feel free to fire away. It's probably the best time to be asking, because there isn't much left to do. I'm pretty confident that in the late game we'll be able to win it out, thanks to Marcus's sniping ability on Squulk and fireballs from our Bright Wizard. Oh, it looks like our cavalry is getting caught. Where are they? They need to pull this way. Another Lieber coming down on Marcus. Might actually kill him. A little bit worried there. We'll see though. As long as he doesn't rout, I think he's fine. And it looks like the Lieber is gone, with Marcus at high leadership. So he can just go ahead and plonk away at that assassin. And you know what? You can even net them just to get a little bit more value. Meanwhile, another fireball on Squulk should do us good. And there are some warp grinders charging towards our Outrider grenade launchers. But as usual, no problem. And there we go. GG from our opponent. And that is another game. What do you bring as dwarves into high elves? Ask Adob. I would say usually a heavy gyrocopter build. Okay, so now that we are loaded in, we can go over. Yeah, engineers can snipe chariots, but I do prefer gyrocopters. If the beastmen engage fast enough, your engineers will only get a few shots off, but I haven't tested it a whole ton, so you could understand it better than I. Now anyways, we are in game, and we'll quickly go over our build again. Like I said, it is our goal is to cover as many fronts as possible from cheese. So against gyrocopters, we have harpies, and quite a few of them too. For boxes, we have our Cygor, and against just a normal dwarf build, which isn't really cheese, but we could see it. We have Bestigors along with Razorgore herds. I also think I forgot to mention our archers deal with slayers. So there we go. There's our build. And we'll take a quick look at our opponent's army size. Pretty small, which means that this Cygor should be able to do well. So good luck, have fun to our opponent. And let's see how this goes. On our opponent's side, it looks like he's opted not for a box, but instead a pretty wide build, going for hammers, interestingly enough. And yeah, that seems to be where most of his money went, into 3 hammers, along with some Slayers. But I recognize that quite a bit of that money is missing, which means that there are indeed Rangers in the build that we can expect to have to deal with. We can also split up our Ungor Raiders now to match up the split formation of his Slayers there. We'll also move down the hill just a bit to give ourselves a better angle of engagement. And hopefully they'll help our archers see their targets a little bit better. So yeah, pretty fun dwarf build here from our opponent. Not too cheesy, but definitely not a great place to be when going up against the Beastmen. Also get a very okay Amber Spear there. And here we go. Our Harpies are in position. And now we engage. So we're going to have our Ungor Raiders just shoot the Slayers, as that is really the only target that they want to be facing. And our infantry will be taking some nice engagements. We're being a little bit slow on our summons here, so let's get that out of the way, and we can bring in Mogar to get his summons on top of the Dowie. You can see the Bestigors here doing very well, showing that they are really able to do a whole ton of damage to to the infantry. But we are seeing how we are getting punished for not having the chariot here, as without the chariot we aren't really able to do as well versus these sort of normal dwarf builds. However, still not too much of a problem, as soon as we take out Thorgrim, I expect this to go pretty well for us. Let's see, we do have some hammerers winning out that right flank, so we'll have to be a little bit careful there. And Slayers are indeed killing our archers right now, so we're going to have to be pretty careful with our mobility. So far it seems like our approach of dealing with all of the dwarf cheese has left us a little bit vulnerable to a more standard Dowie build, as our right flank being held up only by Chaos Spawn now means that we could have some problems here, but we'll see. We're doing well on the other flank, and as long as this Cygor doesn't die, I would feel a little bit better. He is taking quite a bit of damage though, so we'll probably want to bring in those Razorgors to support. And here we go. Let's see, archers too can rush into support. And now we're going to focus on chasing off those rangers and hammerers routing. So we definitely do not want them to be coming back. Some miners over here are probably going to get a nice blasting charge volley. It's pretty bad for us, but we do manage to engage, which is good for us. And oh man, got something in my eye. Anyway, so yeah, that is good for us. But now we're getting our troops are routing again. But our Cygor does look like it's gonna live. So as long as he lives, we'll be able to just pelt down all of these expensive troops. Going to keep pulling him away and take some stock at what we have left. We do have a bunch of Vestigors, which should do well for us, along with a single unit of Ungor herd. And no, we don't have any more Razorgors, So cycle charging is off the tables now, which is a little bit worrying. But we also have our Gorable, who should still be able to do really well in this situation. I guess he'll be our standing chariot here. Let's see, these hammers are still chasing down our Ungor Raiders, which is a pain. So hopefully we'll be able to deal with them with this Cygor. He gets a miss, but he still has quite a bit of ammunition. So not too worried over there. I just really want to make sure that these Slayers are dealt with though. And okay, looks like we have another engage happening. So we're going to get off our summon and send it on Thorgrim, followed by getting Mogr on top of him. And I expect this to go pretty well, as we do have that cycle charge support. There are some Urkun miners stopping our Bestigors from charging in, but I think our single entities will still be able to do pretty well. The Cygor will definitely die to those Slayers if we leave them there, even though those Slayers have very little HP. So being very careful with him. We're going to be sending in our Harpies to support him, so that he can continue throwing boulders at those hammerers. Meanwhile, cycle charging in with our Gorable, really trying to take out Thorgrim. Hopefully that goes well. We're also stalling these the miners to make sure that they don't throw the bombs at the Bestigors. A little bit of a risky situation, since I think if he manually targets them, they will get their bombs off. But it looks like we've lucked out, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So our Bestigors will be able to get their damage in. Meanwhile, Thorgrim slowly but surely getting chipped away by the cycle charging Gorable means that we are in a pretty good position. Mogr will feel pretty safe staying in combat with those Rune Lords. So we actually feel pretty fine leaving him in there, especially since I think he has regen. Let me check. Yeah, he does have regen. So yeah, we feel perfectly fine keeping him in combat there. But anyways, we still have to be pretty careful. There are still some hammerers in the distance that our Cygor continues to miss. And Mogr is now getting slowed down by the Dwarf Hero Squad. We definitely don't want him to die. So with the outskirts, with the edge of the dwarves getting routed off, hopefully we'll be able to win that cycle charge war against Thorgrim. We do have our Cygor now that we can bring into combat. But yeah, we'll have to be pretty careful, as the dwarves can definitely still win this. Mogr is back, and our archers, having served their purpose, are going to be sacrificing their lives to delay those dwarves as long as possible. We are losing our Bestigor herd to hammerers, which is a very bad situation, I must say, as those hammerers are a little bit of a problem, as they do quite a bit of damage, but more importantly, it means that our infantry can't come in to support the fight against Thorgrim. So honestly, bad things all around. And we could actually lose this game, especially since we forgot about that infantry force over there. And okay, now begins the final fight, where we do our best to try to take out Thorgrim. The Rune Lords are not much of a problem. So yeah, it's just going to come down to that. Thorgrim getting pretty low now, with the Gorbel landing some hits. But, oh, actually, we're not allowed to cycle charge here. So, whoops, a little bit of a rule break. But yeah, it seems like us forgetting our infantry could actually lose us the game here, unless the Gorbel manages to pull off a miracle by killing off Thorgrim. And it looks like he might. So as soon as we get our infantry engaged, we can disengage with the Gorbel. But never mind, it looks like he doesn't kill Thorgrim, and that is actually GG. So nice play from our opponent. And yeah, let's see, unless the Gorbel manages to pull back, but yeah, there we go. Solid win from him. I think, what's it, our anti-infantry tech was pretty bad there. You would usually want the chariot. I think putting our Brace Shaman on the chariot would have helped a lot, since it means that these hammerers wouldn't have been able to cause as many problems as they did. You can see here that they got quite a bit of damage there. And yeah, well played. Okay, so hopefully we've covered all of our bases here. And now it will just come down to how well we control that army. So, okay, as soon as we get into the game, we'll see how this goes. A big tell on the Dark Elf forces will be how many units they have in their army. If it's somewhere around 300, I would expect probably some sort of air force to goon out my lord. And then that means that we'll have to play keep away until we actually fight his defensive formation. If we see something around the 500 range, I would expect something closer to an elite infantry box, maybe with some witch elves. And we see here, it is neither of those. It's actually less than 200. So needless to say, it is going to be something pretty cheesy. Now it just depends on how cheesy and what type of cheese. Because yeah, with an army like this, I'm suspecting he's going to have something to deal with my, like, just have some sort of crazy anti-air force. Maybe just just 2 dragons and like 2 flying beastmasters could be an option there. And then yeah, we'll have to be running with our lord for quite some time. Thankfully we do have our bats to delay for him if anything gets too close, and we should quite easily be able to win the ground fight with an army like this. So good luck, have fun. And he says his build is totally experimental. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. And yes, Neckbet, this is indeed against Dark Elves, going up against some hyper cheese. Okay, and as we get into the game, actually looks like he didn't go for that much of an air force. And we are seeing 2 Cold One Knights and some Raven Heralds. Those guys we can chase off with our bats and our lord. And he has also brought a skirmish force, which we have prepared for. So our Dire Pact and Chillgeist should very easily be able to run in and keep those Dark Riders away. So already feeling pretty confident here. There is a Malekith that we'll have to worry about fighting. But I think after we bog him down with Fellbats and charge him with our Lord, we'll be in a good position. So there we go, Fellbats clearing the way for Malekith. These bats chasing the Raven Heralds. Seems like we're covering most of our bases here. And Malekith is beginning to take quite a bit of damage. Wow, actually, we're trading extremely well versus him. As you can see, getting that charge is paying off greatly. Oh, looks like a cavalry charge coming in to our mobile forces. We'll have to pull them away. But they are pretty fast, and I think they should be able to outrun those Cold One Knights. In fact, we can even split them off to have our wolves chase off these guys. Meanwhile, our bats still doing very well versus the Raven Heralds. And our army will be able to slowly march up and hopefully win it for us. See Malekith now throwing down a Soul Stealer. It will heal him up, but our Lord has such an advantage on him right now. I think we'll be just fine. Although we did accidentally pull off our bats off these repeater crossbows, which will cause a few problems. And our Lord is without healing, so I think, you know what, he's going to have to pull back for a bit. And our Chillgeists will have to be careful too. And now begins our runaway from Malekith until our next good engagement. There we go. Chillgeists go this way. And these chariots are getting pretty good value, but they will run out of ammo eventually. It's no problem there. Opponent also throwing a breath attack on our Graveguard. We do split them up, but they take quite a bit of damage anyways. So not the best situation. But I think our ground force alone is feeling pretty nice here. There's also the Beastmaster charging into some zombies. You can expect a very good trade there once we land our Lord. We can see proccing our abilities really lets him nuke down that Beastmaster. So there we go. Our infantry can now pull back to the main army. And oh, what's that? Okay, interesting. Anyways, yeah, our infantry is going to pull back to the main army just to make sure that they don't get cycle charged. And now we routed off the Beastmaster, and we should be able to kill these Cold One Knights too, since they are getting bogged down by all the infantry and our mobility. This is also a pretty tough place for Malekith, since he can't really land. Our Lord would be able to just cycle charge him to death, essentially. There is a Soul Stealer there, which will do some pretty good damage to our blob here. But with Malekith on his way out, I think this should be game. Bargulf chasing these Scourge Runners. We don't really want to commit too hard to that, since the Bargulf could get picked off. So instead we're going to pull him back to chase off these Cold One Knights. And as soon as Malekith goes down, I think that should be game. Since yeah, we just have way too many forces here on the ground. Nice, you routed off another unit of Cold One Knights. And nice. GG. Cool. Yeah, just a pretty cheesy build from our opponent. And the main factor that won it there was our strong anti-air and anti-skirmish. I think, let's see. We do see Wolfrider archers. I'm not sure. The War Wagons might be a bad choice here. I'm not fully confident in them, but I think they're a fun unit. So there we go. We are going to put our shields on the far flanks. It means that our center line will collapse a little bit quicker. But since I don't want the flanks to get shot by arrows, we'll make sure that they're shielded and that they take a little bit less damage over there. Our cavalry will be in the back, ready to cycle charge in and out through the spears. And Franz will be at the ready to snipe out any lords that overextend themselves. We also have the Jade Wizard to support two of our units, Franz and the War Wagons, along with the cavalry. So okay, that out of the way, let's get into the game. Let's see how big our army, our opponent's army is. Only slightly bigger than ours, with what appears to be a focus on stone trolls and black orcs. That seems like a pretty bad situation for us already, actually. But okay, a lot of his money did go into skirmishers, which is better for us, as our war wagons will be able to keep them nice and far away for quite a while too. These stone trolls too can get shut down by Franz, and our Knights of the Blazing Sun in the center should be able to do well there too. Okay, so there are some Night Goblin fanatics over here, presumably fanatics anyways, that we want to charge down with some knights. So let's go ahead and do that. There's also repositioning of the skirmish force, and oh dear, we almost get charged by some trolls. And we do run into some fanatics, which is painful for sure. So a very good trade from our opponent. And now we have Grom the Paunch coming in a little bit aggressively. Maybe Franz can dive in on him. But good control from our opponent means that we can't get too much damage there. Now the engage begins, and we can start our cycle charging with cavalry. In the meantime, our war wagons are going to be, you know what, maybe they should kill the goblin big boss. Okay, and our knights, having done some nice damage, can now pull back so that they can get ready for their second charge. Our war wagons are they're actually going to focus that river troll hag, since it does seem like she's overextending. And with this charge on the right side, I think our knights should be pretty happy with this engage, since we do now have Empire Knights flanking around to surround that goblin force. We're also going to use Awakening of the Wood on the trolls and the greenskin cavalry there, just to make sure that they can't reposition, and pull back Franz, since he is taking quite a bit of damage from Grom. I see an opportunity to terror out some spiders here, so Franz is going to land in there. And then we should be in a pretty good position on that front. Some fanatics coming in, doing quite a bit of damage. I will have to be careful not to die to them. And okay, nice. A big rout means that we'll be able to charge in our cavalry onto the trolls. And Franz should at the very least be able to pick off that goblin big boss. Meanwhile, some spears can get into position to defend the war wagons, as the war wagons put damage into the stone trolls. Nice, we do successfully pick off the big boss with Franz. And let's see, some goblins charging into our cavalry isn't too threatening, but those black orcs definitely are. We're going to slow them down and throw down a big heal over here. And I wish we could chase off those stone trolls, but we are a little bit too bogged down to do so. You know what? We're going to use Franz to chase off the trolls. Oh, but he is getting mithered, which is good for our opponent. And this could be pretty scary, but we do still have quite a bit of cavalry, and a lot of the Greenskins leadership is pretty beat up. We are losing our Jade Wizard, which is a painful loss for sure. So hopefully we'll be able to recover from that. He's going to get one last Awakening of the Wood. But yeah, a pretty big misplay from us losing that Jade Wizard. We're just going to focus on chasing off those stone trolls then. Our war wagons will be able to continue firing though, which is good. And with the stone trolls routed off and some extra knights left, it means that we do still have the mobility advantage. Just one thing that I'm really worried about are those black orcs, which is why we're focusing them with the war wagons. We're going to pull them back and get our knights in position. And okay, a big charge coming in from the Greenskins. It will let our knights take a good engagement. And hopefully they don't take too much damage. It looks like they're being slowed now. No, a soul blight. So it is safe to engage, to disengage with them. And our war wagons are going to try focusing Grom now. Knights are going to keep pulling back. And I think, Franz, you're going to have to pull a miracle if we're going to win this. War wagons will continue kiting. But with our knights so beat up, this could be rough. It's going to come down to how well Franz's terror manages to work out for us. You can see that that it does help out in that it routes off some of these goblin spider riders, which is good, putting in some damage onto this giant river troll hag. However, Franz is getting surrounded now. The black orcs are far away, which helps for sure. And it looks like we do manage to rout off the hag, so that's a plus at the very least. But oh, actually she just barely doesn't rout and comes back. Hopefully we'll be able to chase her off with these knights though. And Franz having a really hard time disengaging. Not sure exactly why. Doesn't have any slow debuffs on him. But I guess that poison just appears to be enough. And if Franz is gone, that does mean it's GG for us. And there we go. Franz has routed. But will he be able to come back? Presumably not. So it does look like GG. And yeah. Yeah, I think that's GG. Whew. Rough game, rough game. So the war wagons there, I felt like they didn't do a whole ton of damage, honestly. I guess they did sort of negate the they sort of were just putting in some constant damage. They helped rout off the hag and the goblin big boss, but they didn't have as much impact as I would have hoped. It'd just be use knights and you just keep cycle charging them down. Oh no, cannons are gonna be terrible. Grenade launchers, maybe. I haven't tested out grenade launchers versus high armor unit like black orcs, but yeah, I'm not sure. I would really like to get into Empire though. It's a very diverse faction with a lot of tools at their disposal. Let's see. So we're going to put our troops in the forest just to make sure that they don't get shot up at the beginning of the game. Our hounds too will be there for some flanking. And our centaurs with throwing axes also are going to be in the forest to make sure that they are shielded and protected. So our opponent has an army of 700, so pretty low. It means that our single entity killers, like the centaurs, should do pretty well. But our high mobility forces, like the hounds, will have a much harder time being useful here. Oh, good to know, Zadag. I'll try out grenade launchers more often then. They do seem pretty fun. But yeah. Let's see. What would we expect from such a small Empire force? Maybe it is just a full skirmish army, in which case our hounds will do well. But I'm expecting something like a steam tank. and a whole ton of knights. We also don't have many archers, so we'll have to make sure the centaurs stay pretty safe, since these are my only units that can shoot up. As soon as our opponent is ready, we'll be able to get into the game. Let's see, my lord Malagor, not Malagor, Mogr, very good in the rush, or not in the rush, against boxes, thanks to his 2 summons. It means that the Chaos Spawn get basically as much value as possible if your opponent is too tightly packed together. And for the Bray Shaman, we have Wild to make sure that we'll really be able to melt any infantry with those 2 spells. For our opponent, he's opted for for mortars, so we can actually wait for them to fire before advancing. There we go. And as soon as they fire, then we move up our army so that we dodge the shots. You can see them there, that they miss pretty hard. So good for us. And now we can move up this heavy flank to chase off those pistoliers. The pistoliers aren't really too much of a problem here. Instead, I think my main worry... Actually, what does he have? I'm not sure what is eating up my opponent's funds here. It seems like we're not exactly seeing the whole army. But anyways, we're just going to keep advancing our forces, get our infantry in the fight, and bring in our supporting forces. Oh, there we go. There's the rest of his money. It's Go Trek. So, we don't want to get cycle charged by knights. So we're just going to keep our minotaurs nice and right behind our backline, while the infantry does the fighting. There are knights in reserve to protect the mortars, along with some spearmen, but with some good maneuvering, we are able to avoid them. Meanwhile, our centaurs with throwing axes are going to be, you know what, they can start peppering down friends, and we can get some AP damage onto those knights. Some of the knights also charging in now means that we'll be able to get some charges in with the minotaurs, and also hit them up with the throwing axes. A Chaos Spawn summon 2 should do pretty good work. And with that out of the way, we were ahead in the night battle, but a very nice burning head from our opponent does cause some issues there. Our hound's taking a lot of damage, but so far we're doing pretty well. We're going to bring back our minotaurs to support this center engagement here, while our hounds chase off these pistoliers. Our throwing axes are going to keep maneuvering, specifically to position in a way that damages Franz as much as possible, as he is one of the main threats. I also see an opportunity to rout off some troops here, so going to charge in onto those Empire Knights, and Franz landing on top of the centaurs means that he will likely get surrounded. So we're going to position like so to try to punish him, but a little bit of a dicey situation. There are burning heads that could come our way, and we do see one now. Luckily for us, it does miss a lot of our infantry. And as long as we can keep these centaur throwing axes safe, I think we'll be fine. But they have taken quite a bit of damage from that Knights of the Blazing Sun charge. Let's see. We don't have too many good places to use spells at the moment, so we're going to hold off on our Winds of Magic. And Franz is taking a beating now. So it looks like this is going to turn out pretty well. We're going to use some magic to hurt the pistoliers, and hopefully we'll be able to start killing models. And sadly, Franz does escape, which is pretty bad for us. It means that he will... Oh, never mind, it's Boris. Oops, my bad. I should have known. But anyways, yeah, so we are able to take out the infantry now, since that support is gone. but our Minotaurs are taking quite the beating. So we're pulling them back to give them a better engagement on the Knights. And we're going to keep trying to take out Franz. Gotrek is going to be something in the late game that we want to deal with. So we're just going to keep far away from him to make sure that he doesn't get a ton of value. There are mortars that are up too in the distance that we want to shut down, but we don't really have many ways to deal with that right now. So we're just going to continue the fight in the center of the map. Empire Knights still being a pretty big problem here, and Gotrek coming in is a threat to our leadership. We're going to pull them back away from Gotrek to try and keep them alive. Boris is healing up, and we do have an option to try to bring in our throwing axes to deal with him. But they are being screened off by the Knights at the moment. Let's see, we're going to throw down a little bit of magic to try to catch out that infantry. And we accidentally let our Centaurs get charged by some Knights. Not the best situation in the world, but the Centaurs can put up a pretty good fight. So with a little bit of spell casting, we managed to peel for them. And yeah, and they do make it out of there alive, so good on them. And at this point, there aren't too many threats. It's just Boris and Gotrek versus the world. And with Gotrek not having too much mobility, it means that I'm feeling like we're in a pretty good position. We also have Hounds, which can do surprisingly high damage to Gotrek with cycle charging. So we're feeling pretty safe at this point. I'm expecting our opponent would have a hard time dealing with all of these forces, as he really only does have 3 single entities left. So at this point, it's just regrouping of our army, and we're turning off fire at will to make sure that we have enough ammunition for when it is most important. Gotrek is taking a pretty nice position in the forest, but I think that's not too much of a problem for many of the Beastmen units. So now we just have to set up the correct engage here. Boris could land on our Minotaurs, which would do quite a bit of damage, but we have our throwing axes at the ready to punish him if he does so. And now we move in to pick off what we can. Some Hounds can kill the Sigmar Sons. So there we go, Sigmar Sons are down. And they can also get some pretty good damage on Gotrek. If Boris does land to try and support here, he will take a lot of damage from our throwing axes. We also don't want to get burning headed, so we're just going to keep cycle charging Gotrek where we can. Oh, and it looks like Fran's actually landing in on my infantry. A nice play from our opponent. He will be able to oh, actually he doesn't escape, instead opting to go into combat. And now we see how well this burning head does rout off quite a few of our troops. And oh wow, a big rout with that burning head. I did not expect it to do that much damage. So so hopefully we'll just be able to take out Boris here and do a little bit better. But Gotrek is now putting in a lot of damage onto our Minotaurs. So we're going to have to finish this off as quickly as possible. And a huge misplay on our Centaur throwing axes, I'd say, letting them get routed off like that. Okay, Boris is taking quite a bit of damage, and we can throw down a spell to deal with those recovering units. And with Boris out of the way, I think we should be fine. But wow, that was really bad play from us, letting so many of our troops get routed off there. Now Mogr can take a pretty long fight versus Gotrek, and we're letting this happen just so that our throwing axes can get their damage on him. There we go. And with that out of the way, let's see, looks like the Bright Wizard looking to get a fight. That would be pretty bad for him with the nearby Minotaurs. And there we go, conserving our ammo, paying off, letting Gotrek get slowly shot to death with axes. Now Mogr is taking a bit of damage, so some cycle charging is definitely in order. But nice, we managed to knock him out of his heal, and with that out of the way, I think that's GG. Wow. Yeah, pretty close game. A little bit scary there after that burning head almost killed everything, but we pulled through. Also, Enforcer, nice to see you. Happy about yeah, thanks for the raid. Just playing some quick battle games here today, doing our best to learn these new factions. We had a pretty nice game as Beastmen against Empire, but as you can see here, we had some misplays against Burning Head, which nearly cost us the game, but we just barely were able to pull it back thanks to our Centaurs recovering. So okay, we're in the game as Empire against Lizardmen, and we've opted for a 3 handgunner build focus. So let's see here. Ooh, wait a second. Looks like there's a bug in my code. Let me just check something real fast, guys. Oh no, oh man. Ah, darn it. We lost the screen cap of the last game. That won't make sense to basically anyone here. So instead of explaining it, I'm just going to go into the game. So the focus of this build are these 3 handgunners for the primary source of damage, and everything sort of revolves around them staying alive. So much so that we have the Jade Wizard on foot, because we really expect nothing to be engaging our backline. To stop anything from charging in, we've brought 1 unit of Unbreakable Swordsmen, along with some Spearmen support. There are also a nice handful of Knights that we'll be using, who will sacrifice themselves to protect the handguns, and also dealing quite a bit of damage back in case any monsters decide to come through. Speaking of Lizardmen dinos, we also have Frains, who should really be able to punish them if they just try to barge through the front line. And yeah, on that front, I think we are okay. But in terms of mass infantry like Saurus, we could have problems there, even with our 3 cavalry. So I've brought an Outrider grenade launcher, which will hopefully be able to help us out in that situation. With that out of the way, we can move on to our opponent's build, who we cannot currently see, but it looks like he has opted for Pterodon riders, along with a pretty wide army, counting up to 1,000 troops. Means that we could get a heavy infantry force, which means that our Outriders are a good option here. We'll be moving up France to make sure that there isn't a solar engine that we have to worry about, but it doesn't look like it. There are skink skirmishers, so these Outriders will have to be pretty careful here. But 1 volley going off on the Saurus, doing decent damage. They'll now be able to pull away from these skirmishers and get another volley off. I think for the purposes of this game, the let's see, we're going to try to focus down this one unit of Saurus warriors so that we can get them routed as quickly as possible. Skink skirmishers coming down along the sides means that we can bring in our cavalry to support. And with our handgunners, whoa, we missed that cavalry force. With the handgunners pointing along the sides, it means that they'll be able to start shooting at those pterodons. Although they're not doing a whole ton of damage, and those pterodons are flying down now, that is a bit of a problem that we will have to deal with. But for now, we are collapsing the front line and winning it quite handily with the help of Franz and our cavalry. We've also caught off a good number of Cold One Spear Riders here. So all in all, I think it's okay. We are losing our handgunners, but actually our reserve spearmen able to chase off some pterodon riders. Looks like they're doing pretty good. There are more spear riders coming into the handgunners now, though. But I think that's a bad choice, as we have quite a few knights at the ready to charge them in the back. You can see that they are taking more damage than the handguns despite getting that charge. You can also throw down a good heal on our knights there. And we have our Sigmar sons holding back the infantry. Meanwhile, we're also positioning our outriders to get in position to start winning that right flank. There is a rampaging manticore, though, that we will have to be careful about. And we're just going to move our Jade Wizard away from that to make sure that he doesn't die. Our opponent nicely pulling his skinks to chase our outriders, negating their value, which is bad for us. We're going to pull them far away to try our best to keep them alive. We're also losing some of our handgun units, but it appears that we still have 2 of them alive. We're going to make them shoot the pterodon riders, since the pterodon riders are the easiest targets to shoot. We don't have to worry about line of sight blocking, which is a plus when things start getting chaotic. Although infantry are now closing in on top of them. We'll pull one handgun unit through the spearmen so that they can get away, and the other one just pulling them away normally, since there are no threats in this area except for some skinks that we will be bringing knights in to hold off. We also have salamanders that have been peppering us all game, but we can finally get some knights on top of them and hopefully make it so that they stop shooting us. As for this right flank, it's been at a stalemate for quite a while, so we're going to see if Franz is able to finally end it by landing on the opponent's lord. We also made a misplay losing our outrider grenade launchers, so we're gonna have to live with that mistake, and hopefully it goes well. Sigmar's sons are going to move on to the Umbral Tide because they are unbreakable, and being unbreakable means that they'll just be really hard to deal with. They'll occupy the Umbral Tide and some infantry at the same time. Meanwhile, Franz did indeed win this right flank, which means that the Lizardmen player should be running pretty low on infantry units at this point. You can see here he really only has a couple skinks and battered Saurus left. So really just the main threats is the salamander hunting pack. And with the Royal Altdorf Griffites at full HP, I wouldn't really be too worried in this situation. Umbral Tide, though, very nice control from our opponent, keeping them firing. And at this point, I'm not sure it's worth it to even try and deal with them anymore. They're nearly out of ammo, and pulling units to try to deal with them would mean that my units aren't doing something more valuable, like sniping off the rest of the Lizardmen leadership, which is what Franz shall be doing now. We routed off another unit of Skink cohort, So we'll pull off all the units except for our knights to help in the mid fight while the knights chase them off. Checking where the Jade Wizard is to make sure that he is not getting murdered. And it seems like he's doing fine, so feeling good there. Moving up our spears to support the Umbral Tide pulling away. So instead, we're just going to be fighting the skinks and the rest of this infantry. Can also throw down another heal on our knights. And like I said, the Umbral Tide simply do not have enough ammunition to win the fight. So army losses kicks in, and we get ourselves a solid win. Ooh, nice. Yeah, a little bit of a sketchy game. He did jump on our handgunners and shut them down really hard, making sure that they got basically no kills. But I think we did well there because we punished our opponent well for that dive in. You can see his cavalry got demolished. His pterodon riders didn't get a whole ton of value. And after all that happened, you could really just collapse his lines with the cavalry and Fran's support. So yeah, pretty good game. Although I think one major thing we could have worked on, or at least thought about more, was dealing with the Umbral Tide. We really didn't answer that that problem for the whole game, and you can see we got punished for it with it getting 100 kills. But yeah, nevertheless, interesting game. And yeah, I think that's it for me today. Thank you everyone for coming in to watch. And yeah, I think I'll be streaming again on Monday. So if you want to be notified about that, feel free to follow. And hopefully I will see you all then.